Have you ever wondered why some relationships, despite their promise, leave you feeling drained and confused? It begins so subtly that at first there's no alarm. Just a slight tilt in your perception, a quiet shift in how you feel about yourself. You start doubting the sharpness of your own mind. You begin apologizing for feelings that were once valid without hesitation. It's as if a slow fog descends, not enough to panic you, but enough to blur the edges of what you know to be true. This is how gaslighting takes root. It thrives in the fertile soil of self-doubt, feeding on a mind that wants to trust, a heart that wants to believe. The person twisting your reality doesn't need to raise their voice or make grand accusations. They simply plant seeds of uncertainty, questioning your memory, your tone, your interpretation of events, until you start questioning everything yourself. In Jungian terms, gaslighting exploits the shadow, the unexamined parts of ourselves we push aside to fit into love, approval, or safety. The manipulator projects their own distortions onto you, but your own shadow, your fear of being wrong or unworthy, catches those projections like Velcro. This is why some women, even those who are strong and intelligent, get trapped. Because the dynamic doesn't break you all at once. It erodes you grain by grain. Like water dripping on stone, wearing it down until the shape is unrecognizable. In this dance of distortion, the sovereign queen within you is lulled to sleep. The part of you that knows your worth, that rules your life with clarity, begins to bend her crown to keep the peace. You become the peacekeeper at the cost of your own truth, thinking that compliance will restore harmony. Yet in reality, every time you silence your intuition to avoid conflict, the manipulator grows stronger and your own sense of sovereignty weakens. Gaslighting thrives on one core truth. The more you abandon your internal compass, the more dependent you become on their version of reality. That dependency is their oxygen, and when you are under its spell, you may not even notice the slow starvation of your spirit. You only feel the growing need to seek their approval, to win back their warmth, to hear again that you are not crazy or too sensitive. It's not love you're chasing anymore. It's relief from the ache they caused. The roots of this vulnerability often stretch back further than the relationship itself. Many who are susceptible to gaslighting grew up in environments where their feelings were dismissed, where truth was fluid depending on who held the most power. This early conditioning trains the nervous system to tolerate uncertainty and to normalize emotional invalidation. In such cases, the manipulator isn't introducing a new pattern, they're reviving an old one. And because the familiar feels safe, even when it's toxic, you may cling to it without realizing the cost. In moments like this, Stoic wisdom whispers its counterpoint. What cannot be controlled must not own you. You cannot control their distortions, but you can control your response. You can choose to return to the still point within you, to ground yourself in what you know without seeking their permission to believe it. The act of holding your inner truth in the face of denial is the first boundary, the first small rebellion against their control. But boundaries are not built in a day. At first, they feel heavy, like wearing armor you're not used to. You might tremble when you speak them or second-guess yourself after enforcing them. The manipulator will notice. They will push harder, test the edges, try to make you believe that your boundaries are cruelty, that your clarity is arrogance. This is where many falter because the discomfort of holding the line feels unbearable. Yet this is also the threshold. Cross it, and you begin to starve the gaslighting of its lifeblood. Boundaries in this sense are not walls. They are the architecture of self-respect. They are the way the sovereign queen reclaims her throne, brick by brick, decree by decree. Each time you hold a boundary, you send a silent message to your own psyche. My reality matters. My perception is valid. I do not need your agreement to know what is true. This message is more powerful than any confrontation because it rewires the very dependency that gaslighting feeds upon. And something begins to shift. The manipulator, sensing the loss of control, may escalate more accusations, more charm offensives, more twisted logic, but their efforts start to feel less convincing. The fog begins to lift and the air tastes different. You start noticing the places where their words no longer match reality, where their actions betray the truth they deny. You are no longer looking to them for clarity. You are observing them through your own. The collapse of gaslighting doesn't happen because the manipulator changes. It happens because you withdraw the power you once unknowingly gave. And hat withdrawal begins with the smallest of acts, trusting your own inner witness over their distorted mirror. The question is, when the moment comes to hold that line, will you be ready to face the storm it brings? Gaslighting does not unravel in a sudden explosion. It frays like a rope left out in the weather, fibers snapping one by one, almost imperceptibly, until there is nothing left holding you in place. At first, those fibers are subtle moments of awareness. The way they recall an event doesn't quite match the memory in your body. The way your voice shakes when you try to defend yourself, as if your nervous system already knows the battle is rigged. These moments are quiet, but they are cracks in the illusion, and the illusion fears cracks. In Jung's language, this is when the unconscious begins to surface. The part of you that has lived in the shadow, your silenced truths, your suppressed instincts, starts pressing against the surface, demanding to be seen. Gaslighting thrives on keeping that shadow locked away, convincing you that your doubts are flaws rather than signals. But once you glimpse the truth, even for a second, you cannot fully unsee it. That is the seed of liberation, even if the soil is still hostile. The manipulator senses this shift, though they may not understand it consciously. They will respond with tactics meant to seal the cracks, more flattery to pull you back in, or sharper criticisms to push you into defending yourself. They may feign vulnerability, revealing selective wounds to make you feel guilty for pulling away. These moves are not random. They are a deep, instinctive grasp for control, because gaslighting can only thrive in the absence of your sovereignty. The sovereign queen archetype cannot be reclaimed in silence alone. She reemerges when action and self-recognition meet. The first action is deceptively simple: pause before you answer them. That pause is a boundary in its purest form. It interrupts the reflex to immediately explain, defend, or appease. In that pause, you can hear your own thoughts before their voice drowns them out. This is how you begin to take back the narrative, one heartbeat at a time. Yet reclaiming your narrative means confronting your own complicity. This is the hardest truth. Somewhere along the way you agreed, however unconsciously, to trade pieces of your reality for the illusion of peace. You let their voice weigh heavier than your own. It was survival at first, but survival can become a cage. To escape, you must face the shadow in yourself that allowed it, without self-condemnation, but with unflinching honesty. Trauma psychology teaches that this pattern is not weakness, it is adaptation. If your nervous system was shaped in an environment where safety meant compliance, then compliance became your default setting. Gaslighting exploits this programming, making rebellion feel dangerous. But here is where the Stoics lend their quiet strength. The danger is not in speaking your truth. The danger is in losing it. You cannot control their reaction, but you can control whether or not you betray yourself again. When you start to hold your truth without offering it up for their approval, the dynamic begins to falter. You will notice they repeat themselves more, circle back to old arguments, or try to overwhelm you with rapid shifts in tone. This is not proof you are wrong. It is proof the ground beneath them is shifting. They feel it, even if they deny it. Your stillness, your refusal to be pulled into the spinning of their narrative, is the erosion they cannot stop. The queen within you grows each time you recognize a manipulation in real time and choose not to step into the dance. Sometimes you will still slip. Old habits are strong, and they will find ways to press the buttons that worked before. But slips are not failure. They are moments to refine your awareness. Each return to yourself strengthens the pathway out. Over time, you will realize you are no longer the one chasing explanations. You are the one deciding which conversations you will even engage in. Gaslighting collapses when the target no longer plays the game. When you stop supplying endless emotional energy to defend truths that are self-evident, you create a vacuum the manipulator cannot fill. They may rage, withdraw, or search for new prey, but the tether between you weakens. Your boundaries become less about keeping them out and more about keeping yourself in alignment. This shift is the turning point, not an escape yet, but the first real breath of freedom. And here is where the deeper question emerges. Now that you have begun to see through the distortion, will you allow the discomfort of truth to guide you, or will you choose the familiar ache of denial? Because one leads to liberation, and the other leads back into the fog. The discomfort of truth is not a clean pain. It is jagged, unpredictable, and it will press against every old wound you've tried to keep sealed. When you start to see the manipulator clearly, you also start to see yourself clearly. Your compromises, your silences, the way you bent your own spine to fit inside their world. This is why many retreat back into the fog, because clarity makes you responsible for choices you can no longer pretend are accidents. In the realm of Jung's archetypes, this is the crossing from the maiden to the queen. The maiden seeks to be chosen, protected, and approved of, even if it costs her authenticity. The queen understands that to be chosen at the expense of her truth is to be dethroned in her own kingdom. This transformation is not about bitterness. It's about the sacred refusal to be ruled by someone else's distorted mirror. The crown is not given by others. It is claimed. Gaslighting thrives on your emotional reactivity. The manipulator studies your triggers the way a hunter studies prey. They know the phrases that ignite your anger, the silences that make you anxious, the comparisons that make you doubt yourself. But when you begin to master emotional self-regulation, you become unreadable. This is not numbness, it's sovereignty. You still feel, but your feelings are no longer weapons in their hands. In modern trauma psychology, this is called building emotional safety from the inside out. It's the moment you realize your nervous system doesn't have to dance to their tempo. You can breathe slower when they speak faster. You can speak softer when they raise their voice. You can choose not to answer a baiting question at all. Every time you do, you reclaim energy they were counting on stealing. The Stoics understood this intimately. He who angers you controls you. If the manipulator cannot control your perception, they will try to control your state. And when you stop giving them that control, they are left exposed. The mask slips more often, and the underlying insecurity or cruelty begins to show. This can be shocking, because you may have clung to the belief that somewhere beneath it all, there was a kinder version of them. But gaslighting's collapse forces you to see the truth. What you thought was kindness was often just strategy. This is the point where many women experience the pendulum swing of emotions: rage at the injustice, grief for the years lost, guilt for not leaving sooner. The sovereign queen allows herself to feel it all without letting it dictate her next move. She knows these emotions are part of the purge, the burning away of illusions. They are not signs of weakness, they are proof of awakening. As you step further into this awareness, you may notice your boundaries start to take on a different tone. They are no longer frantic defenses built in moments of crisis. They become steady, non-negotiable truths you carry into every interaction. You don't need to argue for them or announce them with force. They are written in the way you carry yourself, in the silences you allow to stand, in the doors you quietly close. And here lies one of the most dangerous moments for the manipulator. They realize they can no longer reach you in the same way, so they escalate or they vanish. Both can be disorienting. Escalation can feel like an attack you're not ready for, while vanishing can trigger the ache of abandonment. But both are proof of one thing. the game is breaking. The power imbalance that sustained them is no longer intact. From here, individuation, the Jungian path to becoming a whole, authentic self, becomes your quiet revolution. Individuation is not about building walls against the world. It's about integrating every lost piece of yourself so you can no longer be fractured by another's manipulation. It is the point where you can stand in the same room as them and no longer feel the pull to prove yourself or the need to shrink. Yet the question remains, when the manipulator finally realizes they have lost their hold on you, will you be ready for the silence that follows and the self you will meet inside it? Silence after manipulation feels strange. At first, it can feel like standing in a room where the noise has suddenly stopped and you can hear your own heartbeat echoing. For so long, your mind was filled with their voice, commentary, correction, contradiction, that quiet feels almost hostile. You might catch yourself searching for the chaos as if it were proof you still exist. This is the withdrawal phase, not from the person, but from the chemical cycle of tension and relief they engineered. In trauma psychology, this is the nervous system recalibrating. Your body has been trained to expect emotional spikes, so when peace arrives, it doesn't feel safe. It feels empty. Many return to the manipulator here, not because they want the abuse, but because they crave the familiarity of the pattern. It's the same pull as touching a bruise to see if it still hurts. But the sovereign queen learns to sit in the quiet, to let the absence of chaos become her new normal, even if it feels unnatural at first. Jung G would call this facing the shadow of solitude, the part of you that fears who you are when no one is defining you. Without their distortions, you are left with your own raw reflection. You begin to see the habits you developed to survive, the roles you played to be acceptable, and the truths you swallowed because they were inconvenient for others. This reckoning is not comfortable, but it is sacred. It's where the fractured pieces of self start to find each other again. The manipulator may try to re-enter during this phase, often under the guise of reconciliation or closure. They might show vulnerability, admit partial fault, or speak of misunderstandings. This is not random. It's a test to see if the silence has made you miss them enough to let them back in. The queen does not answer every knock on her gates. She knows not every return is redemption, and not every apology is truth. Here is where the Stoics' discipline of discernment becomes a lifeline. They taught that what matters most is not how others act, but how you choose to meet them. You can acknowledge their words without absorbing their reality. You can hear them without handing over your peace. You can forgive without granting re-entry. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are the structure that keeps your inner world intact. With each day that passes in this silence, something else begins to grow: clarity. It arrives slowly, like dawn seeping into a dark room. You start noticing the patterns that once confused you, the conversations that always seemed to circle back to your flaws, the way they shifted blame with surgical precision, the subtle ways they trained you to distrust your joy because joy made you harder to control. These realizations are painful, but they are also your map. This is where individuation deepens. You begin to see that the collapse of gaslighting was not just the end of their control, it was the beginning of your authority over your own mind. The more you anchor into this, the less pull their memory has. You stop rehearsing arguments in your head. You stop wondering how they're doing or if they've changed. They become smaller, not because they are gone, but because your life is expanding beyond the frame they kept you in. From here, the Queen's presence is unmistakable. You speak less, but your words carry weight. You entertain fewer conflicts because your energy is no longer for rent. You stop explaining your choices to those who have shown they only listen to twist them. You live in a way that makes manipulation impossible, not by fighting it directly, but by becoming a person it cannot attach to. And yet, even in this strength, there is a question that lingers. Now that you have learned to recognize and dismantle manipulation, how will you ensure you never again trade your truth for someone else's comfort? To ensure the truth is never traded again, the queen learns the art of preemptive discernment. She no longer waits for the storm to test her walls. She reads the clouds before the rain begins. Subtle patterns that once felt harmless now signal caution. The quick dismissal of her feelings, the playful undermining masked as a joke, the way someone avoids direct answers when the topic is uncomfortable. These are no longer overlooked. They are early warnings. Jung's work teaches that the unconscious seeks wholeness, but it will also recreate the familiar until it is healed. This means that without vigilance, the shadow of past wounds can pull you toward the same dynamics in a different disguise. A softer manipulator, a more charming version of control, can still lead to the same erosion of self. The queen does not fear this truth. She uses it as a compass. Every interaction is weighed against one question: does this connection honor my reality or distort it? The Stoics would say the measure of a person's wisdom is in their ability to hold their center when tempted by comfort at the cost of principle. The manipulator offers that comfort in subtle ways: flattery, attention, the rush of being desired. But the queen has learned that anything requiring the sacrifice of self-respect is not a gift, it is bait. She does not starve herself for scraps because she knows the feast she has built within. In modern trauma recovery, this stage is called integration. You are not only aware of your triggers, you navigate around them without self-betrayal. You choose differently, not because you are guarded, but because you are free. Relationships are no longer evaluated by how much they soothe your loneliness, but by how much they support your authenticity. You have stopped asking who will choose you and started asking who is worthy of you. In this way, boundaries become effortless. They are no longer drawn in the heat of defense. They are woven into the fabric of your presence. You don't explain them because you live them. Those who are aligned with your truth will never test them. Those who are not will find no foothold, no lead. Are to pull. Gaslighting cannot survive here because its roots cannot penetrate the ground of someone who knows where she stands. And yet, even in this mastery, life will bring tests. A familiar face may return, softer and more self-aware, claiming change. A new connection may feel electric, drawing you in before you have the chance to fully see their patterns. These moments are not failures, they are mirrors, reflecting how far you've come. The queen does not fear these mirrors because she knows her reflection now. Jung spoke of individuation as becoming the person you were always meant to be, freed from the masks you wore to survive. This is the ultimate collapse of gaslighting, not when the manipulator falls, but when you rise so completely that their voice becomes irrelevant. They could speak the same distortions, but they would find no echo in you. Their reality is no longer yours to defend against, because you no longer stand in its shadow. The woman who reaches this place does not need to announce her power. It is felt in her stillness. She can walk away from half-finished conversations, unprovoked accusations, or desperate attempts to reopen old wounds without a single backward glance. Her peace is not up for negotiation. Her reality is not open for debate. And her crown is no longer a symbol of survival. It is a declaration of self. So the final question becomes this: when you feel the next pull towards someone's version of love, will you choose the safety of their arms or the freedom of your own truth?